Hey Denchpegs, what's going on? It's Lan and Remixes here, and welcome to my album review of Hardwell's debut album, United We Are. Now, Hardwell has been producing music for a while. He's a DJ and producer from the Netherlands. He's based out of Amsterdam, as are most of the big current DJs right now that are centering their stuff around more big room, rather than, let's say, Above and Beyond, who's centered out of England and does more kind of trancey sounds and stuff like that. So this is Hardwell's debut album. It's his attempt at finally getting some serious content out of there that isn't from his revealed albums that he's done a few times. I think he's done 5 so far, revealed 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, obviously, that I've got most of them. Yeah, I've got 3, 4, and 5, I think, but there should be another one this year. But that's Hardwell's yearly mix of songs and exclusives from his record label Revealed, which typically centers around more big room and electro styles, but sometimes likes to release progressive house and trancey type of tunes along with the occasional tech house, but that hasn't happened in a very long time. First of all, the album I wouldn't say is necessarily great. It's basically a collection of different styles that seem to follow what DJs and producers like Dylan Francis and Tiesto have followed in the last year, not really providing a concept for the record like you might find on a rock record like Coldplay's Ghost Stories, for example, or Porter Robinson's Worlds even, which although is an EDM album, centers around this one type of sound. Rather, it sounds more like a collection of songs. Now the intro track, I think it was premiered about a year ago at Ultra Music Festival. It's called Eclipse. And this track is absolutely insane. It might have been Tomorrowland it was premiered at, actually. It's a truly awesome orchestral intro leading into a hard electro drop. The extended mixes are actually available on Beatport, but I will be getting the regular edition rather than the Beatport edition, so I'm going to be talking about that and the regular mixes of the album rather than the extended mixes. Eclipse is very awesome. It's epic, to say the least. Leads into a nice electro drop, like I said. And basically, that's probably my favorite track from the record. Other than that, and the closer track, which is kind of ironic, the opener and the closer are my favorite 2 tracks. It's called Birds Fly and has Mr. Probs, who you'd probably know from his track Waves that Robin Schulz remixed, and that got very popular this last year. A few of my other favorites include Follow Me with Jason Derulo. I actually think his vocals on this track are a lot stronger than they usually are. Like I said, it's one of my favorites, but I have a couple bones to pick with it. One, that he seems to stretch his vocals a little too much when he goes like, I'm not going to attempt to sing here, but he seems to want to stretch and make his voice more emotional than it could be if he just sang like he regularly sings. I'm not a big fan of his solo music, like especially the stuff that's come out the last year, Talk Dirty, Wiggle, all that stuff just really doesn't appeal to me. But this particular song, he shows off his vocals very well and leads into a nice melodic progressive drop, which, as you guys should know, I am absolutely crazy about those styles. So there's a track called Sally that's had a lot of controversy. He did it with Harrison, who did the vocals for Ain't a Party by David Guetta. He's like, let me see your freaking hands, you know, that guy. I like his vocals, but not on this track. Actually, I like the vocals. I hate the lyrics. The lyrics are absolutely horrifying. I don't even know how to explain it other than if it was supposed to be a joke track of some sort, like Skrillex's Doompy Poomp, I think was supposed to be a joke track, but I just can't find anything redeeming in this track at all. Like, it basically sounds like the guitar sounds like a rerun of Ain't a Party with David Guetta, and then the drop doesn't center around Hardwell's sound at all. It sounds like Vinai or Rehab, the stuff they've been doing lately. Not that I have a lot against how it particularly sounds, but it's just been so overused, you kind of expect Hardwell to include more of his own styles rather than this, and this track is just absolutely horrifying. Even compared to the rest of the album, which I wasn't entirely crazy about, this track in particular is just bad. Tiesto comes back on the record to do another track called Colors with Andreas Moe and obviously Hardwell. On Tiesto's last record, A Town Called Paradise, Hardwell and Andreas Moe were both featured in, both in different tracks. So I'm going to kind of compare and contrast those. The last track he did with Hardwell, called Written in Reverse, I loved. It was my favorite track on Tiesto's record. The track with Andreas Moe was called Echoes. There's actually a Hardwell track on this album called Echo, which is very confusing. Everything's kind of flip-flopped. Like I said, I didn't care about Tiesto's record that much. It just seemed like most of it was thrown in. There were a few great tracks, but let's stop talking about Tiesto. Basically, this track just sounds like all of Tiesto's failed attempts from the record. Not that I'm saying I hate it. The vocals are probably the strong point on the track because I'm not crazy about the production and how this song actually sounds. Like I said, the last Tiesto and Hardwell collab was very good, along with their track 076, which released a long time ago from what I remember. It was before I was even into this kind of music, so there was that, and I'm just not crazy about this track in general as compared to those other two. And, of course, it wouldn't be an album if Hardwell didn't jump on the Deep House bandwagon with his track Where Is Here Now with Funkerman. And I had never actually heard of Funkerman before he announced the track list, which I feel bad about. I was actually thinking Funkerman was Funk Agenda, I think, who has had Hardwell actually remixed Funk Agenda a while ago, the song Man with the Red Face. That was always a good track. I enjoyed that one quite a bit, but this track, I feel like it was just Hardwell's attempt. Like I said, it's a mix of styles, and I feel like it was just Hardwell's attempt to capture an audience that really doesn't want to listen to his stuff. Right now, as on release day that I'm recording this, the album isn't charting very well anyway, so I feel like Hardwell would have had a more successful album if he would have stuck to his own styles like he did on Eclipse, singles like Spaceman and Apollo that have come out in years past. And Hardwell just doesn't seem to stay with that. Like I said, I don't mind this track. I actually really like it, but I feel like because it was thrown in as this one Deep House track, I just couldn't appreciate it in the context of the album. There's just so much bad on this album that I hate to include because he could have easily cut stuff like this out. Like I already mentioned, Sally, there's a track called United We Are, and I feel like that was just Hardwell's attempt to win over fans of Armin van Buuren, who also listen to Andrew Rayel. It sounds a lot like his stuff from Find Your Harmony, and I just can't appreciate it because, as we all know, or as I should probably mention, Hardwell took over the #1 DJ position and took over against Armin van Buuren, who on his label actually has Andrew Rayel, and I feel like this is Hardwell's attempt to win over trance fans, which I just feel like wasn't very genuine and didn't really help him at all in the context of this record. I really didn't appreciate this track. I rated it pretty low on my scale. I'm not crazy about that. Don't Stop the Madness with W&W. Just W&W in general these days I haven't been crazy about, but this track, especially with the beginning, Fat Man Scoop, who featured on Skrillex's Recess last year, he's like, Fat Man Scoop, Hardwell. It's just annoying, and I don't really see a need to have him on the record at all. The first time I heard this, that was the vocal copy, not the instrumental one. I had heard the instrumental a while before the vocal, but when he premiered the vocal, I was just like, man, this is awful. It would have been better if he wouldn't have thrown this vocal on. I don't really get why it's there anyway, but even if it wasn't there, I wouldn't have been crazy about the track, so I guess whatever, it's just one of those tracks that I wasn't crazy about to begin with on the record. There are a few redeeming tracks, like there's this track Echo, which has this really awesome vocal line. It has a great piano line. It's got this really cool trancey electro drop, which I am absolutely crazy about. That's probably one of my favorite tracks on the record, to be honest, especially because of the piano line at the beginning. There's a track called Young Again, which came out a few months ago. It seemed like it was kind of a rerun of Avicii, like he's trying too hard to make a pop kind of guitar intro single. I'm not crazy about him wanting to copy that off, but I really like that track too. Arcadia with Joey Dale. It sounds a lot like most of Joey Dale's tracks, but to be honest, it was one of the best big room tracks of 2014. That was actually the first single from the record. I think it premiered at Ultra as well, or actually, I think it premiered before Ultra, but everyone started knowing about it at Ultra. That's what happened. And it eventually made its way onto Revealed 5, which I have. And like I said, I'm not going to talk about the extended mixes, but I actually am going to talk about it for a second. On this track in particular, it's cut down so that it just doesn't sound necessarily good. The extended mix waited till the second verse to put the vocals in. This one tried to put in both, and it just doesn't work out, which is why I rated it lower. I typically, on my list, I would have rated this a 5 because I really, really like the track. All in all, there's just a really few, there's a bunch of really forgettable tracks like Area 51 with Dallas K, which I like better than Burn, but it just seemed kind of thrown in. There's actually Nothing Can Hold Us Down. I actually really like that one. It's got a nice progressive couple of drops, which was nice to hear with Headhunters because I absolutely hate hardstyle. But when I first heard this, I was really excited because I really wanted to hear some progressive house from Headhunters, which is exactly what happened. But then it leads into this kind of gross hardstyle drop at the end, which I just really didn't like at all, but it's still pretty energetic and manages to keep my attention, so it ended up being one of my favorites from the record. Another one of those forgettable tracks is this track with Bright Lights called Let Me Be Your Home. Typically I'm crazy about Bright Lights. I think she's had 3 songs now with Blau, and one of those was with Paris and Simo. I really like those tracks, but this one in particular I just wasn't crazy about. Hardwell's produced with Bright Lights before, but on this I just feel like her vocal work wasn't very strong, and it's honestly just a disappointing track. Anyway, like I said, Birds Fly with Mr. Probs, that you'd know from Waves. He makes a very good appearance. This track is really nice. This is the closer, which is going to lead into what I'm talking about at the overall rating. It kind of reminds me of Tritonal and Mr. Fiji Ouija's collab, Seraphic. And like I said, it only reminds me a little bit of that track, but that's kind of the vibes I'm getting. But it ended up being probably the most unique track on the record, maybe other than Echo with John Mendelsohn. I really, really enjoyed this track. Definitely one of my top picks on the record. For an overall rating, I'm going to have to give this a 6 out of 10. Based on track enjoyability, I calculated about a 7.5, but because all these tracks were just thrown in and I didn't feel a real uniqueness, and Hardwell, I'm not going to say disappointed, but didn't really live up to the hype on his debut record, and I really would have appreciated if he would have done something a little more of his style, relative maybe Spaceman and a few other tracks that just kind of felt pretty close to what Tiesto's record last year sounded like, which neither that was I crazy about. So anyway, that's my review of United We Are. It's a solid 6. I was thinking about rating it higher, I was thinking about it lower. I thought 6 was the only fair rating for this album, which didn't really show a lot of diversity. And anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this rating. Hardwell, United We Are. Peace out.